see, because I want to. See, because I want to. Testing audio. See, because I want to. Testing audio. See, because I want to. Testing audio. That, so that works. See, because I want to. Testing audio.
Michigan faces a critical choice between proven leadership and failed Washington politics. Mike Rogers has a proven. Michigan faces a critical choice between proven leadership and failed Washington politics. Mike Rogers has a proven. Michigan faces a critical choice between proven leadership and failed Washington politics. Mike Rogers has a proven. Michigan faces a critical choice between proven leadership and failed Washington politics. Okay, folks. Here we go. As one Crookshank here, your one and only Move Swiftly speaker, former Division I college football player, and current 5-time published author and educator, back again. And let me tell you, it is always an opportunity every single day. And I relay this message to as many people as I can, is every single day you're going to have an opportunity to either get better or you're going to get worse. And one of the two, you're going to have that option every single day. There's no staying the same. And whenever that decision comes up, I don't know what it may be for you, it's on you to decide to get better that day. And let me give you a real life example. So if you can recall, if you happen to be on my live stream earlier this morning, or if you've been keeping up with my work, you know that I've committed to doing a live stream every single Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Myself being the morning person that I am, I decided I like to do it at 8 a.m. in the morning. Do what I got to do, knock it out. That's where I'm probably the most energetic, because I do teach full time. And, after dealing with the kids and all that, I get a little drowsy. So I decided to wake up earlier, or get to the school or earlier to record the live stream and all that. And I had an incredible episode. I mean, everything flowed, every point I hit. I mean, I was just out there, doing the damn thing. And I realized once the recording ended, I realized that it was actually on mute. So all this time I spent a good portion of the day trying to figure out how to transcribe the audio, and everything was recorded. So it was a complete mess. And that's where the decision actually hit me to say, you know what, instead of just saying, hey, you didn't get it this day, or, hey, just move on to the next recording or whatever it is. That is not what I did. Obviously, I'm back here again, re-recording and touching on the same points, or touching on similar points, because what I do, the work I do it from the heart. I do it because I actually want to see. I do actually believe in the services that I offer. I believe in what I'm doing. I believe in everything I'm about. I believe in what exactly I'm trying to create in people, and what my services can actually do to the people. do for people. And when you believe in yourself so much, then it should be easy to re-record. It shouldn't even be a question. It should be a situation where, something like that happens. Hey, okay, let's record again and let's get it done and forget about how you may feel, how tired you may feel, and all that kind of stuff. So we're back again, kind of re-recording and reiterating some of the points that I was making this morning, because they're still in my head. I don't take a ton of notes for the show or anything like that. This is just me off the cuff, giving you the experience I have, and doing what I can do on my part to make to make business owners' lives easier, not just business owners, but obviously a lot of the business owners and everybody that they're responsible for, taking my experiences, taking everything I've done and applying it to businesses. So if this is your first time meeting me, by the way, if it's the first time hearing my voice, name is, like I said, Aswan Crookshank, a former Division I college football player and current 5-time published author and educator. And what I do now with the whole Move Swiftly concept, the whole idea of Move Swiftly, is I created a framework, a business, a brand, an organization, a way of life in which you take the lessons, the teamwork lessons, more specifically the teamwork lessons that you learn on the football field, and you apply it to businesses, and you apply it to organizations in which want to reduce the turnover and make it so the teams and the employees are actually moving like a cohesive team. So what I do every single Wednesday, what I've been doing every single Wednesday, is I've coined the phrase "wintrepreneur tip." All right, the wintrepreneur. Now, if you're listening to this and you're saying to yourself, that term wintrepreneur is something I've never heard of before, it's because yours truly, actually coined the term wintrepreneur. All right, we all know what an entrepreneur is. Some of you may or may not know what an intrapreneur is. An intrapreneur is actually somebody that has an entrepreneur mindset, but has a job that's paying them every 2 weeks, and has been blessed enough to be in a situation with the business and the entrepreneurial vision that they have is in alignment with whatever that company that's paying you every 2 weeks. There's a clear connection between the two entities, between the two organizations. And I just added a W at the beginning because of the football background and made it a wintrepreneur tip. So start off every single Wednesday giving you a wintrepreneur tip. And for you guys listening to me right now, you are lucky because you just got one previously. And the fact that I'm actually re-recording this, all right, that's actually what I mean when I say wintrepreneur, and actually doing your due diligence, staying responsible for your own self-determination, me knowing the long day I had, but still knowing that I needed to make sure I recorded this and all that kind of stuff. Me doing that's actually a wintrepreneur tip that I have already given to you. But the one I was speaking about earlier this morning was actually something that leads into today's topic. All right. So today's topic, you see the topic there. It's the right, capital RIGHT. Get it? The right. The right replacement, and you see the names: J.D. Vance, Stony Brook football, my alma mater, Stony Brook University, and we're talking the Washington Commanders. Shout out to the Washington Commanders for so far having a great season. Myself being such a diehard fan of the team. There's two teams. All right. Again, first time listening to me, I got to put this out there now, just so you know. Talk a lot of football over here in the Move Swiftly world. All right. Washington Commanders and the Michigan Wolverines are the two teams I am a diehard fan of. I don't mess around. I don't play around when it comes to those two teams specifically. I make sure. If you've ever watched a game with me while one of those two are playing, you would know, hey, I don't play around when it comes to. Wait, hold on 1 second. I don't play around. So because of what happened earlier, now I'm kind of paranoid. So I'm making sure the live stream is recording and the sound is on and all that kind of stuff. So let me just make sure everything is moving cohesively. And the sound is on and all that kind of stuff. All right, so good. I got it. Just make sure everything. I got it. All right. Yeah, it kind of made me paranoid because of what happened earlier. So yes, as far as the wintrepreneur tip, and like I was telling you, diehard Commanders fan and diehard Michigan Wolverines fan, and we'll get into more of why Michigan and more of why the Commanders as we go along in our journey and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, today's wintrepreneur tip, the one that I gave earlier this morning, was actually from Sunday. All right, Sunday, if you do keep up with football and you do keep up with the NFL, you know that the Washington Commanders had a very big weekend. A very big win, a very exciting win. They go and win the game off a last-second Hail Mary, all right? And where I was, I'll just tell you guys where I was during that time. And just so we're clear, I am a diehard. Like when I say diehard, I mean I used to cry myself to sleep on nights that the Redskins, now Commanders, would lose. This is how big of a fan I am of that organization and how much they've actually put me through. So it's Sunday, and it's one of the biggest victories in recent years for the Washington Commanders. And you can put it in the chat if you want, but ask me where exactly I was during that specific time. I was actually, and I'm this obviously a rhetorical question, but or if you want to put it in the chat, that's fine. And by the way, if anybody, is in the chat, make sure you shout yourself out, put your email in, and make sure you contact me about, getting plugged into my world. I have a free guide on how to use innovative teamwork to reduce turnover and all that kind of stuff. A lot of the links and everything will be posted in somewhere in the show notes. And as we get going, you'll start to see me make these announcements about how you can stay in my world, some of the free resources I provide to business owners and all that kind of stuff. But I've kind of already gotten into the episode, so we'll make sure I'll put that in the show notes somewhere as you guys continue to come in. All right. But anyway, it was Sunday. It was this past Sunday when again the Commanders had a very, very emotional, very thrilling victory. And I actually missed it. I missed it because I was doing work on my business. It was Sunday, I remember Sunday afternoon, and there was a boxing gym that I'm actually going to be partnering with because I'm going to be starting free boxing lessons out here in West Palm Beach, as you probably saw. Actually, let me just show you this real quick. I'll be starting free boxing lessons out here in West Palm Beach. And I had actually went to a boxing pop-up workout. It's a new gym coming out here in West Palm Beach, new boxing gym named Rumble Boxing and Fitness. And I was doing a workout with them and doing some collaborations and figuring out how to work with them. Now that workout was like from 5 to 6. So there was still time for me to catch the end of the Commanders game. And what I decided to do was, because there was a situation with my podcast, there was a situation in which I had to actually publish over 100 episodes of my podcast, because when I first started doing the Move Swiftly podcast, I would put music at the end of every episode. And what actually ended up happening was Spotify flagged it recently, and they sent me an email, said, look, you got 24 hours to remove these episodes or remove the music from these episodes, or we will remove them, or we'll delete them from the feed and all that. So I spent all last week, hours last week, republishing, going back, trimming the music out of the episodes, and then republishing that. So during that time, I'm talking about during the time in which the Hail Mary, Jaden Daniels threw that Hail Mary to put the Commanders up over the Bears, I was doing that work. As much as I was doing the tedious work of republishing my podcast and all that kind of stuff. So when it comes to being a wintrepreneur, and I'm telling you all this not to necessarily impress you about me necessarily, but impress upon you to, hey, look, when you're in business, when you decide that you want to be in business, when you decide that you want to put your name behind something and you want to build an organization, build something from scratch, there's going to come a time, or even if it's time to be a parent, right? Time to be a boss, or whatever the situation is, there's going to be that obligation that you start to have to yourself to say, hey, as much as I want to be at a sports bar watching it with my Commanders faithful, I found a Commanders bar out here in West Palm Beach. As much as I wanted to be out there hanging with my team and watching that victory and, slapping high fives with all my Commanders fans, I was here on this laptop making sure this last piece got done, because I knew it was something that I didn't want to have to go into next week. That's what I mean when I say wintrepreneur. Are you actually doing the work that you need to do? Is that your responsibility? All right, that's no politician. We're going to dive into some politics in a couple minutes here, but I'll just put it out there now. There's no politician that's going to do that for you. That is something that's under your control. That is something that you can create. That is something that you're able to do if you have the discipline to do it. All right. So being that, let's get into the actual topic today. The topic today is understanding the value, the importance, the kind of the life-changing or the business changing, the way your business can actually grow and be, I'd say, grow and go to another level. All right. We'll say transient, and we'll say more so even when we're talking about finding the right replacements, it's your business actually being able to go generationally. All right. If you look at a company like a Blockbuster that spent years, not, adapting to online streaming, and they just wanted to do the rent video stuff. And now, Netflix comes in and they take their DVDs. No, you want a business in which you're finding people that come in that can take it to another level, regardless of the generations, regardless of what's going on with the technology in the world. And right now, just saying that, we can start right there with the Commanders. All right. Again, I will reiterate. I'm reiterating this for a reason. I was a diehard fan. I am a diehard Washington Commanders fan. I started watching them. I watched them through North Turner. We're talking head coaches now. So this year, the Commanders have a brand new head coach. His name is Dan Quinn. And so far, he's starting off pretty good. But I've watched him through North Turner, Marty Schottenheimer, Steve Spurrier, Joe Gibbs came. They brought Joe Gibbs back. They brought Jim Zorn back. They had Terry Robisky at a time. They were switching coaches so often that when it comes to finding the right replacement, when it comes to actually, really creating a cohesive culture within that organization, as you know, for the past years, it's been an absolute joke. It's been chaos when it comes to the leadership and the problems that we've seen when it comes to the Washington Commanders and all that. So when we're talking the right replacement, we can start right there with what's currently going on with the team. All right. Dan Quinn has had a very great resume coming into the Commanders position. I thought that it was a smart pick. So just to go back and give you some history, I know if you're not into football, I'll just kind of give you some history on where he started. He actually played at Salisbury University. I believe it was Salisbury State when he played there, but he's familiar with the DMV area and he knows a little bit about what it takes to know how passionate we as fans are when it comes to the Commanders and all that. But also when it comes to the defensive side of the ball, you got to think this was the defensive coordinator during that Legion of Boom, during the time that the Seahawks had the Legion of Boom, and I don't know where you would rank them necessarily in terms of the top NFL defenses of all time, but they're definitely somewhere floating around the top 10, maybe even top 5, because they sealed the deal. They won with their defense. Not to say Russell Wilson and Marshawn Lynch and all that were bad players. They were, in my opinion, I do actually agree with what Cam Newton said a couple of years ago in terms of he was just a great game manager. They had a great run game in Marshawn Lynch, and then they played great defense. When you look back at that Super Bowl that they won in New York, they were going against the Denver Broncos, and it was Peyton Manning who was supposed to be the guy to come in and seal his deal as the greatest quarterback of all time, and it actually ended up being a blowout by the Seattle Seahawks. And if you really look at the way the game went, it was a defensive dominated game. All right. This was the defensive coordinator at the time. It was Dan Quinn, who's the current head coach for the Washington Commanders. All right. Understand that when we're talking the right replacement, all of these things matter. All of these things are very important when you're putting the people, when you're looking to replace people in new positions and all that kind of stuff. Right. So when we're talking about one of his major decisions, I don't want to call it the biggest decision that he made, but definitely somewhere that's very important when you're a new head coach coming into the NFL, given how offensive heavy, given how every rule, in my opinion, is based upon how well the offense is doing and to try to benefit the offense and all that kind of stuff. Who you pick as that offensive coordinator is going to be a very, very big decision. It's going to be a very big hire, right? So if you can recall, before he picked Cliff Kingsbury, the offensive coordinator for the Washington Commanders was actually the guy named Eric Bieniemy. All right, and Eric Bieniemy was the offensive coordinator for the Kansas City Chiefs for all those Super Bowl years. And there was all this media attention, all this hype. I mean, ESPN, First Take, they did segments about why Eric Bieniemy doesn't have a head coaching job. There were segments, there were people coming out, ready to burn down every NFL owner and say, oh, he don't know what he's talking about. He deserves to be a head coach. I mean, it was absolutely ridiculous, to the point that when he left Kansas City, Eric Bieniemy leaves Kansas City not to become a head coach, but he leaves Kansas City to become an offensive coordinator last year for the Washington Commanders. They had a press conference, bro. They had a press conference for an offensive coordinator hire. An offensive coordinator gets hired, and all of a sudden there's a press conference, and I believe his actual title was the head coach, assistant head coach as well. I think he had that title with Ron Rivera as well. I'm not sure. The bottom line is there was so much talk around who Eric Bieniemy was, what he deserved, all this media attention that was going on, and the offense just plain and simple underperformed. Did not look great under him. Now, granted, they didn't have a Jaden Daniels, they didn't have a quarterback, and I actually said it during that time. I actually called this out to where, as great as he may have been in Kansas City, he had the Pat Mahomes, he had the Tyreek Hill, he had Travis Kelce, he had a great system and Andy Reid. He had a lot of great things that were working for him that made it. And I'm never gonna say offensive play calling is easy, but it made it so he had the support that he needed so the offense could thrive. Right. So you go to the Washington Commanders. Ron Rivera is primarily known for his defensive prowess. He was a defensive coordinator before he became a head coach. And if you know anything about football, you know just because a head coach becomes a head coach doesn't mean they're gonna stop coaching the way they normally coach. So most likely Ron Rivera was spending a whole lot of time on the defensive side of the ball, and he made Eric Bieniemy like, look, you're the keys to the kingdom. This is your offense. Do your thing, right? So what happened was Dan Quinn takes the job, and he brings in a Cliff Kingsbury, all right? And that wasn't a really popular decision. It really wasn't, all right? Again, you get the national media who likes to poke holes or likes to talk about these hires as if they're actually in the room and stuff like that. But they basically said, oh, well, you know, Cliff Kingsbury didn't deserve an NFL job. They basically said didn't deserve the NFL job when he was in Arizona because of his lack of accomplishment when he was at Texas Tech. Even he coached Patrick Mahomes actually at Texas Tech, and then he also coached Johnny Manziel as well. So when it comes in, and I'm explaining all this for a reason. I'm breaking all this down for a reason. In fact, this morning I remember saying the same thing. But the reason that I'm explaining all this to you is because when you take on a position of leadership, like let's say you're the Dan Quinn of your organization right now. Let's say you are the new leader, the new owner, the person that's responsible for bringing these people in. It's important that you block out the noise and you actually bring in the people that are going to be the most beneficial and that can be the best replacement for you if something should happen and if you should move away. To me, that's the reason that the Commanders have been so successful to this date, is because you get a Jaden Daniels type guy who's this new generation of quarterbacks who isn't the Peyton Manning that's just going to sit back and, try to, throw from the pocket. He's not Tom Brady, where he's just sitting in the pocket, throwing from the pocket and all that kind of stuff. He actually can use his legs. You can actually use that run keep. You can threaten the defense with your running ability and then still be able to drop back and hit dimes and hit people in stride and all that kind of stuff. And Cliff Kingsbury is used to coaching that type of player. So it was the best fit for the situation, regardless of what outside noise meant and, how people were so much caping up for Eric Bieniemy and how much he deserved to get a job because of what he did in Kansas City and all that kind of stuff. And as a business owner, you got to be thinking like that. You got to be thinking who's the best person for this specific position, this specific job. And that's how you get ahead. That's how you build success. That's how you reach a level of sustainable success. All right. Success over the period of time. It's one thing to just get a couple wins here and there, make a sale here and there, all that kind of stuff. But it's another to put people in the right place to where you're successful over a period of time. That's what you should be chasing. That's what the great ones do. All right. So transitioning from that, like I said, I grew up in the DMV. This is why I know so much about the Washington Commanders and the Washington Redskins franchise and all that. And seeing that I grew up in the DMV, right there in the nation's capital, yes, you better believe it, there was a ton of politics that as one was exposed. I played football, and I was exposed to a lot of politics. It was like completely wrapped around my upbringing. My dad would, he'd come home every single day, he'd watch news, and he'd be screaming at the TV, yelling at politicians, yelling at policies and all that kind of, like, me in my mind, like not knowing how can someone get so aggravated, so pissed off over with politics and all that. And seeing that I am recording this during election season, it's only 6 days before we find out who our new president is going to be. The thing that actually inspired the topic of this episode was the recent interview that JD Vance had with Jake Tapper. So before I go any further, before I start talking about it, I want to play you guys a clip. Of just a little bit about what JD Vance had to deal with this quote unquote journalist, this person who's supposed to be objective, the person who's supposed to be like, since when do journalists start arguing with the guests that they have? They're supposed to be there asking them questions and letting them answer, not cutting them off and all that kind of stuff. But listen to this quick exchange. Now, I recommend you go watch the whole 17 minutes on your own. It's Jake Tapper and JD Vance talking over an interview with CNN. So watch it, and then we'll respond to it in a second.
Said publicly
1.5% inflation.
the military to go after the enemy within, which is the American people.
He did not say that, Jake.
The enemy
he
within?
said that he was going to send the military after the American people. Show me the quote where he said
he was going to. He said the enemy within.
He said far left lunatics. He's talking about
the
people
Pelosi's
rioting.
And said publicly.
All
right. So, like I said, go watch the whole thing on your own. I recommend you do that. All right. And what bothers me about that whole clip, what bothers me about that whole exchange that they had is, it was about a week ago. All right, it's about a week ago where Kamala Harris, all right, current vice president and a Democratic nominee for president of the United States. We all know the name at this point, right? She had an interview with Brett Barrier, in which had the similar tone. There was a lot of fire back and forth. There was a lot of quote unquote cutting people off, and there was a very tense interview, right? And I remember the next day listening to segments about how Brett Barrier, well, first of all, it was only 25 minutes, and it was said that Brett Barrier, he was waiting for her. She was late for the interview in itself. So obviously he had to get certain questions out. So that's just going to say that now. But based on the exchange and how heated that exchange got between Brett Barrier and Kamala Harris, a lot of people came out the next day. There were segments, they were actual segments about how he was so rude to her, how he doesn't need to be cutting off the vice president like that, how he's misogynistic, how he's, playing all into a lot of the Democratic talking points that if you're anything like me, you've kind of gotten tired of hearing at this point, right? So the question I have, and you could put your answer in the chat or whatever it is where's the segments for JD Vance? Where is the uproar? Where's the, hey, Jake Tapper, you're supposed to be an objective journalist. You're supposed to be the one asking him the questions and letting him answer the questions and not attacking him and trying to, paint pictures of, not trying to get him to say certain things and trying to insinuate certain things, trying to put words in his mouth and all that. Where is the segments for that? You see, whenever I talk politics, whenever I talk this election season, and I never would be the irresponsible, I'll never stoop to the level. I'm still moved, by the way. I am still moved, all right? Still moved by Michelle Obama's famous, they go low, we go high spiel. I'm still moved. I still believe in that, even though, again, the words and the actions aren't really measuring up lately when it comes to a lot of the shit that the Democrats are doing. But when it comes to my criticism or what bothers me about Kamala Harris, it is not her. I believe she's an incredibly accomplished lady. I believe that if she wasn't running for president, I would have nothing but kind things to say about her. I think she has done some incredible work for herself, her career. Everything she's done deserves to be commended. The only criticism that comes on my end is to what is around her, and the way the double standard and the way people are reacting to her versus the opponent. You're not holding, and then to have the audacity to say she's being held to a higher standard when you know that, first of all, if she was being held to a higher standard, that's the way it should be. She's currently in office, so she should be being held to a higher standard. That's exactly the way it should be. Now, the fact that you guys would stoop to that, and you see an interview like this, if there's no uproar, there's no, hey, Jake Tapper, you don't talk to your guests like that. You don't interrupt them. You don't cut them off. He said it in the interview, and I know I didn't play the clip because I don't have time to, and eventually I'll learn how to, I'm catching up with my YouTube. It's time for me to become one of these legendary YouTube dudes that know how to play clips that, react to it. I'm working up to that. But if you watch the whole thing, he said it. JD Vance said it in this interview. He wants to talk about why grocery prices are so high. He wants to talk about the plan, why gas prices are so high. He wants to talk about the actual economy. He wants to talk about the things that American people care about and why they are voting and what they're hoping to get out of their president. And all you want to talk about is what somebody who used to work for Trump said about him and what they call him, so you can continue to feed this narrative that he's some sort of a menace to society. And on that point, then, and this is the issue. And I spoke about this earlier this morning when I was talking about how embarrassing it is for Kamala Harris to be a 49ers fan. The Daya, I mean, has come out and said publicly that she's a San Francisco 49ers fan, and you have one of the star players from the San Francisco 49ers wearing a MAGA hat, like making a point to go wear a MAGA hat for your team. You were in San Francisco, all right? You know, that the reason that somebody would go out of their way to do that is because when you spend so much time, so much of the 90 days that we have seen this woman on the campaign trail, so many interviews, so many things that have been said, it has been so much, it has been so much about how bad Trump is. So much of that. And when you trash your enemy I don't want to call it enemy, but when you trash your opponent to the point that the people who do love Trump, the people who are diehard supporters of Trump, I mean, he obviously has millions and millions. He has over half the country is supporting him. And when you trash that individual and you don't have the decency to even have any respect for your opponent, eventually these things start to catch up to you. Eventually that mindset, eventually that energy that it takes to beat someone down and bash them and trash them and trash them over and over again, eventually that stuff starts to catch up to you, and you get folks who really wake up. You really get folks, a critical thinker like myself. I don't have a dog in the fight. Democrats not paying me for this. The Republicans aren't paying me for this. I'm going to be doing exactly what I'm doing, regardless of who's in office next week. All right. So I don't have a dog. I don't have a horse in the race. I'm just being a critical thinker. And I'm watching two people. One has been the Republican nominee for 3 straight election cycles. That's 12 years, guys. 4 times, do the math. That's 12 years of this man. It's for some reason he's making it. For some reason he continues to make it to the top of the ticket. And then you have, well, I mean, obviously one of those years he was obviously already the president, but at the same time, even though he wasn't there, at some point we'll say 2. Then we'll say 2 elections if you want to get technical. But for twice now, he's been voted there, and this opponent is only there because the previous person that was actually voted in Joe Biden, he just dropped out. He gave us no explanation as to why he quit. She gives us no explanation as to why he quit. The only thing that we hear whenever the question gets posed as to why he dropped out is, I think history is going to look back and say, you know, he made a great move for the American people, or he did something really nice for the American people, or selfless. That's usually the word they use. Oh, you did something so selfless for the American people by dropping out, which I don't see how you come to the conclusion of it's selfless when we don't even know the reason why. We don't know what happened to him. We still don't know. The only thing we know is he had a shitty debate. He got his ass kicked on a debate, and a couple weeks go by and he quits. There was never a specific reason. The only thing that got said was, it'd be most beneficial for my party. And if that's the case, who's really running things? If your reason is the only reason you're going to give us, and I'm not going to stay on here for too long because I'm trying my best I'll get on to the next topic soon. But if your only reason for actually leaving and dropping out the race, and you got to think 4 years ago, they spent so much time. There were so many people voting for Joe Biden. You got Trump out of office. You guys did it. Congratulations. You win, right? We did what people thought that they needed to do and got Trump out, and now all of a sudden Biden's in. And for him to leave 4 years later after some debate that he didn't do well, and then for your reason for leaving to be, oh, I'm doing it because it's in the best interest of my party. How much power does the actual president have if that's the case? When you think about the whole logistics of it, if somebody goes and quits, if you're a sport, and I'm breaking it down for my sports team, my people that keep up with sports, I'm breaking it down for my people that are in business, are business owners as well. If you just decide as a leader that you're going to go and quit because you had a bad day or a bad debate or you had a bad showing, and not give one reason, not real reason as to quit other than, oh, it's in the best interest of my party or it's the best interest of the people that are kind of my team or whatever, then how much power do you actually have? How much power did you really have? Really? Right? So it's just using common sense. It's understanding the the theme of today, like I said, we're talking the right replacement, and this episode was actually inspired by JD Vance and his his fiery exchange with Jake Tapper, who also, by the way, was a moderator. He was a moderator at the debate between Trump and Joe Biden. So you get the moderator who's supposed to, again, be very straight down the line, be very, hey, I'm not going to tell you who to vote for and not attack a certain candidate or not be favorites or favorable to a certain candidate. And you get him, of all people, going at it on TV with JD Vance, who is the vice president nominee for the Republican Party at the moment. And he was the one that was actually moderating the debate. All right. That's what I mean when I say the right replacement. And I'm bringing this up. Because I loved what I saw from JD Vance. Absolutely loved it. And you're talking to a Michigan fan, a diehard Michigan fan. I don't like to speak too kindly of Ohio State people. It would hurt me this morning to kind of praise Nick Bosa for what he did and all that. And now I'm praising JD Vance, Ohio State guys and all that. But listen, credit deserved. When credit is due, you got to give credit where credit is due, regardless of my allegiance to Go Blue and the Wolverines and all that. I got to give him credit for the way he handled himself in that interview. You just have to. I don't care how much you love Kamala Harris. I don't care how much you hate Trump. I don't care how much of a Democrat you may be, you got to give him credit for the way he kept coming back. He's like, look, you're not going to come at me and try to talk to me as if I'm going to say something negative about Donald Trump. He has a party, he has a side, he picked his leader, and he was able to defend that leader in a very articulate way. I mean, just going back at him, every little objection, every little thing he threw at him, he goes, nah, you're not doing this, everything. And he was just going at him. I thought that was about to just in the ring. I'm a boxing trainer too. So I was like, I like this guy. And that's what inspired me to talk about it today, because that right replacement and what we have been experienced and what we can all agree on, regardless of your party, is we're starting to see, I think this is the first time, at least in my lifetime, that we're starting to see the reality of a vice president potentially becoming vice president. That is something, if there's anything that we've all learned, regardless of your side of the ticket or what you believe in and all that, your policies or whatever, we can all agree that the person that you pick as vice president is incredibly important, because the actual reality of them becoming president is a reality. It's not just the face. It's not just somebody that you plug in for optics. It's not somebody that you plug in just for the look of it and all that. Based on what we're seeing with this election and what we got to take away from this election is how important that vice president pick is. And when you look at the way he was going at my man, like that, to me, if you're talking about new leadership, you're talking about new leadership, I just, again, I like what I saw from him. Obviously, still more to be determined as I continue to do my research. I'm actually because, again, I'm a Maryland guy, I'm actually a huge fan of Wes Moore. I believe the governor of Maryland as well. I actually listened to his book the other day, The Other Wes Moore. And if you listen to some of his work, he's a really sharp fella. And things are changing. Things are changing. And if I can agree with Kamala Harris on one thing, is she's right. There is going to be a new form of leadership. The world is going to look completely different. You're going to start to see young people like me, people coming with their own voices, with their own platforms, and they're getting their opinions in on politics. And I think just having people who have an opinion. I think people just coming in and speaking on politics and, using a lot of what I'm doing now when it comes to taking your experiences in sports or taking your experiences in your family or whatever. And, having your voice to be heard other than just voting. Having your voice be heard is not just a matter of voting. Understand, we fought to have the right to vote. All right. Now that we have that, now it's about letting your voice be heard and giving your opinion, your honest opinion, regardless of whatever your party is, regardless of whatever your ethnicity is, regardless of whatever your gender is. You got to really just give your thoughts and give your honest feedback. And that's what we're seeing with this new generation of leadership, whether it is JD Vance or it is a Kamala Harris. We're seeing a new way forward. And you can think, in my opinion, you could thank a Donald Trump and a Barack Obama for that, because you see that these were two different dudes. These weren't like life politicians. You had Obama, who was just smooth with it. He's out there quoting rappers, and he's knowing their songs. Be like, he's talking rap. Like, I remember there was one time he was talking about Hillary, and he wanted to shake his shoulder. He's dust his shirt off his shoulder, and he's coming out. He's rapping Eminem, and you get Donald Trump, and he's talking about. I mean, he's a former NFL owner, and he's telling the the NFL players to stop taking a knee, and he's swearing and shit. I'm like, okay, it's not the typical politics anymore. And I think the best part, especially being a kid from Maryland, I just love the debate. I love the conversation. I love the back and forth. I love the being able to, you got your opinion, I got my opinion. We could just duke it out with the words, and we could really figure this out. I think all that stuff is great, and these conversations need to continue. All right, so I'll leave politics alone for now. Leave politics alone for now, and we're going to get into my final topic today, which is Stony Brook football, the Seawolves. Ooh. Wow. Right now, 6-2 under brand new coach Billy Koch. And I got to tell you just a little bit about why it's kind of rewarding to see how well they're doing from a distance. All right. When it comes to Stony Brook football, actually, before I get started, let me get a tip of water. All right, Stony Brook football. All right, how I ended up there. I was really late in the process. I had a 2.2. I ended up with a 2.2 cumulative grade point average. I played one position on the football field. And athletically, I was probably Division 3, Division 2, probably, athletically, in terms of just playing one position. I was a Division 3 type of player. However, I wanted to play D1, having a name like Aswan Crookshank. My identity was wrapped in the game of football, and playing at the school I played for, which is Good Counsel High School, well-known, nationally known football organization now, nationally known high school football team now. I would have felt like a failure if I didn't go and play Division I football. So it was late in the process, and at the time, his name was Coach Carlton Goff. He was the recruiting coach for Stony Brook that recruited the Maryland area. And I remember he was actually there to see another player of ours. He was the wide receivers coach, and he really liked this wide receiver that we had. And I just happened to walk into a meeting that he was having with some of the other guys. And I remember just sitting down and listening to him give his spiel and stuff like that. Now, at the time, Stony Brook was kind of a weaker FCS program. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, they were still in the Northeast Conference, where we played against schools like Wagner and Monmouth and stuff like that. So kind of a weaker D2/FCS program that were just kind of trying to find their way at the Division I level. And then when he and I were speaking, or when he was giving his spiel to the high school kids that I played with on my team and all that, he was saying how at some point we want to get to the level to where we're playing Richmond, where we're playing James Madison, and all these teams I'm mentioning. At the time, they were in what was called the Atlantic 10, which is now known as the Colonial Athletics Association, and that's the top tier, the cream of the crop when it comes to FCS football, and when it comes to big time FC. Basically, guys that easily can compete with Division I programs, FBS programs. You saw earlier this year how well North Dakota State, played Colorado. This is, higher end FCS programs. And that's where he was trying to get. That's where the Stony Brook program, this is in 2007. That was the mission that they were on at the point, right? As of now, right now, they are ranked. They play in that conference. They play in that conference, and I'm going to fill in some gaps here. But they play in that conference of the Colonial Athletics Association, and they're currently ranked. They're currently 6-2 under the brand new coach Billy Koch. All right. So anyway, I got there as a walk-on. I got there because it was a lifelong mission of mine. I wanted to play Division I football, and it was something that I felt in my heart that I needed to accomplish as a man in order for me to move forward and, really just take a step forward and really look myself in the mirror and say, Aswan, you got this, go do it, go make it happen. And then a lot of the things that I've been able to accomplish since then has sparked because of me being able to do that, which is why I stay so locked in. I'm always, checking the score and how they're doing and all that kind of stuff, right? So last year was the last year of the guy who coached me. His name is Chuck Priori. He left a legacy there. Right? He was there for, I believe it was 20 years, 2 decades as a Division I football coach. Is a great accomplishment, meaning you saw the program grow from, what I just said to now they're competing with major Division I programs and all that, right? So last year they went 0-10. 0-10, lost every game, every game. And I remember actually texting my boy, I still keep up with, still stay in touch with Taj. Shout out to Taj if you're listening. But I remember texting him a few times last year, and I'm like, yo, it's starting to get embarrassing now. It's starting to get embarrassing, given that, we played there. We still, stay up with the thought leadership world, talk sports and all that. Now people are starting to doubt our knowledge as football. As alumni, nobody wants to see their school losing every single game. It's not something that you want to see, all right? Someone that experienced that, right? So it was the last press conference from the last game last year when they went 0-10. And I remember Coach P he told the reporters, this was his opening statement. He goes, look, you could put those 10 losses on me, but however, this program deserves the respect it deserves given what we've been able to accomplish over the past years. I'm paraphrasing it, but that's pretty much what he said, right? And I bring all that up. Because I want to re-emphasize the point that I've been making throughout this entire episode, throughout this entire conversation you and I have been having, is the right replacement, finding the right person. I myself personally was hoping, or I was kind of an advocate for Coach Tyler Santucci to become the head coach at Stony Brook, because he was a teammate of mine. He was somebody that I played with. Right now, I believe he's currently the defensive coordinator at Georgia Tech, if I'm not mistaken. I remember last year he was at Duke and how well Duke was doing, and his coach Mike Elko is now the head coach at Texas A&M. So I knew Duke did well. Actually, I remember watching the defense when they beat Clemson when Duke beat Clemson last year. I remember watching Coach Tucci, and actually this year when they beat Florida State, and I saw Coach Tucci, I'm like, let's go Tucci, So I was kind of an advocate for him to come back to Stony Brook and kind of, seal the deal, have it come full circle and all that kind of stuff. But the person that they did pick, Coach Billy Kosh, who played his high school ball in Maryland and all that stuff. If you look at his background, you look at his resume, you see that he spent a lot of time. He was an offensive coordinator at Richmond, and like I said earlier, before, when I was talking about where Stony Brook football wanted to be, it was to be competing with the schools like the Richmonds, like the James Madison University. In fact, when I first got there, the big rival, Hofstra University, they were basically the team. They were the team that was competing with all these schools that I've mentioned. And when I was there, Hofstra cut their program, and pretty much Stony Brook took their place in that. And, Hofstra cut their program because they wanted to build a medical school, which turned out to be the right decision, seeing that you're going to need more doctors and football players and all that, especially at that level. But Stony Brook has now become that program that is able to compete at a higher end FCS level and can beat. In fact, we actually did beat a FBS program. I remember one year we actually did beat Army. We beat Army one year, and I'll never forget that, because a lot of the guys that I had played with, I remember seeing that they finally beat an FBS program, and that was like a big deal. And I'm mentioning all that to you because when you understand the overall picture of your goals and what it is you're trying to do as a business owner, you got to bring in the right people. You got to focus on, hey, this guy, and we'll use Stony Brook as an example. This guy, Billy Kosh, had a dad that coached at the University of Maryland. He was just at Western Michigan. He spent a lot of time being the offensive coordinator at Richmond, which is a school that we compete with. And then you look at what the success he's had so far. Again, obviously we're still early. We don't want to make it like he's already there. But overall, you start to see the difference. I'm assuming, I haven't been able to obviously watch any of the games live, but as I'm kind of keeping up with some of the games and keeping up with some of the energy and just kind of seeing their posts and all that kind of stuff, you're already seeing a different kind of energy. You're already seeing a program now that's not taking steps back. You're seeing a program now that's competing with the big, I almost said the Big South, that's where we play, but you see a program that's competing. See a program that's able to compete with the Richmonds, and they just beat William and Mary, and they're ranked, and very likely they're going to make the playoffs and make a run at this. All right. And as I close you out, I want you just to consider that when you are building your business, when you're building your organization, you're making decisions on where the money's going to go, the budget, the services, and who you're going to bring in. all of this, everything I'm saying is going to require you to bring folks in that you know, that you have it in your heart, have it in your lungs, have it in your soul, that can absolutely do the job. If you don't bring these people in, again, your business will not make it over a long period of time. You've got to be constantly wired in a way where you're bringing in and thinking about your replacements. All right. So there it is. All that being said, let me make sure, because again, it got me really paranoid because of what happened this morning. I realized my sound wasn't going, so I'm going to check it one more time to make sure all of that recorded live. And let me make sure, yada, yada, yada. Let's go.
Life was a lot better. I trust really.
All right, all right. All right, it did. All right, it did. It recorded. Let's get it. Let's get it. So this is live. If you are interested in working further with me, again, just drop your email somewhere in the comments, or shoot me a message, and I'll send you over all the information and the free resource that we have over here in the Move Swiftly world. We're all about helping business owners of 20 or more employees create cohesive teams, making it so the employees, the staff members, they're moving in a way very much like a championship high school football team. They have that level of commitment. If that is you, if that's something that you'd be interested in working with me on, please get in touch with me, and we'll go from there. Everyone out there, and I'll just give everyone out there the main website to check out to dive deeper into all my work, into everything. It's makeyourmove.com. That's MAKEYAMOVE.com. I am here Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Also, actually, Sunday. Shout out to Kimberly Blue if you're listening as well. We do Stay Hired Sundays. And eventually, now that I'm really getting the hang of this technology thing and knowing how to, put certain videos and get everything checked out, you better believe at some point going into this new year, you're going to start seeing me doing this every day, because it's time for me to catch up to the legendary YouTubers out there, the legendary content creators out there. Time for me to really get do my thing. All right. So again, main website, MakeYourMove.com, MakeYourMove.com. As one Crookshank, your one and only Move Swiftly speaker, checking out. You guys continue to move swiftly. We will talk more soon.